dead. I'm dead? It can't be. I'm alive. Can't you tell I'm alive? I've got to make them see. You! Listen to me. Look at me. Can't you hear me? Maybe it's a nightmare. If I try, I'll wake up. I've got to move. Get a finger. I can't. I can't. I must.
Welcome to the Cinematic Void podcast. Cinematic Void is a cult film series that hosts screenings in the Los Angeles area as well as virtually. I'm your host, Jim Branscombe, and joining me as always is...
Hey, it's Nick Vance, Paranoid Futures on Letterboxd, Twitter, Instagram. You can find Cinematic Void on the World Wide Web at cinematicvoid.com, as well as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all major podcast platforms. If you want to support The Void, you can consider joining our Patreon. Not only get cool perks, but you make this podcast as well as the Cinemadness movie possible. All right, Jim, it's still January.
You know what that means. It's still January Giallo here on the Cinematic Void podcast and just Cinematic Void in general. As we are recording this episode, we've already had 2 of the Los Feliz 3 January Giallo screenings. So far, we showed Dario Argento's Creepers, as well as that ultra-rare Italian language 35mm Technicolor print of the Perfume of the Lady in Black, which... unfortunately, it is on its last legs. It's gone vinegar. Print started to shrink. Projectionists had a hell of a time keeping that film in focus last night, but crowds seem to enjoy it, and, you know, it's a rare treat, and sometimes you just got to appreciate the chance to see something, even if it's not perfect. So that's been going on, and more January Giallo. I'm actually flying out on Friday to go to the Coolidge Corner Theater in Brookline, Massachusetts to go host a screening of Umberto Lenzi's Orgasmo, aka Paranoia, you know, one of the films we talked about on last year's January Giallo episodes of the Cinematic Void podcast when we did Umberto Lenzi and Sergio Martino. It's not really a confession we have here, but Nick is not the biggest Giallo fan. And I constantly subject him to, like, Giallo films or Giallo adjacent films. I think we've done more Giallo related things on this podcast than anything else. And I feel like before we get into today's episode, I should let Nick say his piece on Giallo. And this is by no means Nick saying, like, I hate this fucking shit or whatever. I think it's a fair discussion because Giallos, as much as I love them, aren't for everybody. And Nick isn't the target demographic. So it's kind of want to just talk about, like, what it is about the films that you don't connect with you, but certain ones do, obviously. But that's for any genre. Like me, I'll watch any piece of shit Giallo, regardless how ridiculous and bad it is. And you, it's like some of these, even things that I think are terrific, you're like, man, that was a struggle.
Yeah, struggle. Yeah, you're throwing me under the bus here. Well, there's just something about the tone. There's something about the pacing and the tone, and a lot of times the plot, the nonsensical plot. You know, they're considered a Hitchcockian in a lot of ways. They're murder mysteries, but, like, it just never really hits that note for me. You know what I mean? Either. I don't know. Can I defend not liking Giallos? It's not. A lot of times it doesn't feel as gory as they can be. It doesn't feel enough like a horror film to me either. You know what I mean? Like, I'm never scared watching a Giallo. I'm never, I don't know. Not that I'm ever, like, sitting around, I'm scared at movies, but there's that tension there that I'm looking for in, say, a horror movie. I never quite find in a Giallo. So it just never quite just gets there for me, you know?
And that's a fair point because, like, I know a lot of people that unabashedly love Giallos as much as I do, but there's also people that, like, can't fucking stand them. And you're not quite on that level because, like, the films we're going to be talking about today, you actually genuinely like both of them quite a bit. And we'll get into that in a second. But, like, it's, you know, as someone who's, like, really loves this genre, but then has been very open about hating, like, Back to the Future, Goonies, and stuff like that.
Hating fun.
Just call me I'm the Euronymous of film. No film, no fun. There's a reference for like 5 people. I guess Nikolai will get that one. Shout out to Nikolai because he'll be the only one, maybe. But it's kind of interesting, and it's like not even a taste thing because we like a lot of the same movies in general, music, that kind of thing. And it's like this is a genre that like I love to death, and you are just like, please stop showing me these movies. Please stop doing podcast episodes on these movies.
Just like anything, I will say that I have from you ended up seeing all of the really great ones. So I have a list of giallos that I do really like, but my patience for like, oh god, just pick a color and an animal and a fuck, like I don't know, man. I don't know.
I mean, it's a fair point because like there is a certain point where like those movies were very carbon copy of each other. Like, you obviously had the high points, but then like there's definitely like third-rate Xerox Argento getting made, which like I'll still watch and find something redeemable in, whereas like someone else will like not have the patience for.
The same goes for even just like 80s slasher movies. Like I like them just fine. Do I need to see the C and D rate 80s slasher movie? No, never. No. But then again, some people, that's your shit. And that's awesome.
See, those are the ones I like the best when you get to that level of slasher, because it's just like you're getting past like the studio stuff and like, but it's different. That's even different from like why I like giallos, because like I think it's because I like murder mysteries. I think the 70s cinema era in general is just like probably my favorite era of film. I just like how films looked. So I like how a lot of the giallo films look. And I'm not talking about like the crazy gelled Argento lighting. I'm just saying the general look of 70s movies is like something that I really enjoy and like. I think it's just like the era, the vibe, weird occult elements, like the use of like the same actors throughout, just popping up here and there. I mean, it goes beyond giallos. I love a lot of the Italian stuff, like the Eurocrime, then later on the zombie movies and, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I guess I'm just kind of more all in, but like, I think it's just like that weird murder mystery thing where like, when it's done well, it's amazing. But when it's not done well, it's kind of an enjoyable train wreck where you just kind of figure out the director got confused at what the fuck they were supposed to be doing in the movie, which there's definitely been some giallos where I'm like, I think they just forgot who the killer was and then just picked someone at random just to finish the movie. I mean, I can't point to anything specific, but like there's been moments of that. With that out of the way, we are talking about 2 giallo films that you ended up enjoying, and there is going to be some debate about at least one of them about how giallo it actually is, but I think there's enough things in there that kind of carry it through. So that gets into today's episode. We are going to be talking about the giallo films by director Aldo Lado. He made 2. Originally, we were going to do a third one, which was the Night Train Murders, but kind of thinking about it, I think that's closer to like the Last House on the Left, like cash-in territory, and I think that deserves to be part of an episode where we talk about those kind of movies at some point. So we're just going to focus on the 2 main giallis he did make, which are Short Night of Glass Dolls and Who Saw Her Die. And what I like about both of these, and we'll get into it as we talk about them, is like they're very unique and they're very different from each other, which is kind of very uncommon from a filmmaker that makes giallos. But before we get into that, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to talk about the giallo films of Aldo Lado here on the Cinematic Void podcast.
J&B Scotch Whisky, il più svitato, il più amato.
Unbearable suspense that keeps you on the edge of an abyss of terror.
Take a cult film odyssey into Cinemadness with Cinematic Void. Based in Los Angeles, Cinematic Void is a film series that specializes in horror and exploitation films. Currently, we are hosting Cinematic Void Up All Night in the Cinemadness Movie, a monthly virtual screening series, as well as the Cinematic Void podcast, where we dive deeper into the world of cult cinema. You can find Cinematic Void on the World Wide Web at cinematicvoid.com, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you like what we do, you can support Cinematic Void by joining our Patreon. Until next time, see you in the void. Welcome back. We're talking about the Giallo films of director Aldo Lado here on the Cinematic Void podcast. I feel like this is going to be a tongue twister, so apologies in advance for when Nick and I screw it up. I should mention I first became aware of these movies when, back in the day, Anchor Bay put out the Giallo collection, which was a box set with 4 Giallo films. It actually had both Short Night of Glass Dolls and Who Saw Her Die in there, as well as the Case of the Bloody Iris, which was originally released as What Are Those Strange Drops of Blood on Jennifer's Body? Really crazy Giallo title. Bloody Iris, I think you would like. It's got Edward Fenech and George Hilton in it. And it also had the Bloodstained Shadow, which is another really, really good Giallo. So I think, strangely, I think Bloodstained and Iris are the only two that at least domestically aren't on Blu-ray yet or haven't had remaster. So I have a feeling those will be coming at some point. But, you know, talk about Aldo Lado, and like, I hadn't watched either of these movies in a while. And it was kind of a revelation to rewatch them. And like, you know, I was surprised by not only by how much I still like these movies, but how I think they've aged and are even better than originally seeing them, you know? So we're going to start off with his first Giallo, which incidentally enough was his directorial debut, which was Short Night of Glass Dolls, which came out in 1971. And Lado had previously been a screenwriter, and he also wrote, I'd say, more on the Hitchcockian side than, you know, maybe Giallo, maybe sort of Giallo, a film called The Designated Victim. He's credited as the writer on this movie as well, but according to Wikipedia and other websites, it says that the great Giallo scribe Ernesto Gastaldi, who wrote basically all of Sergio Martino's Gialli movies, did an uncredited rewrite on there. I can't, you know, prove that this is a true fact or not. There might be some info out there, but from just the research I did, like, I couldn't confirm if it's true or not. But there's a few Gastaldi touches in this movie, so maybe. It features a stunning score by Ennio Morricone, and also very unique and kind of different from him, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this discussion here. The film stars Ingrid Thulin, who was in a bunch of Ingmar Bergman movies. I wanted to make sure I was very distinctive in how I said that. She was in things like Wild Strawberries and Hour of the Wolf, plus Visconti's The Damned. Jean Sorel, who we talked about previously with Perversion Story, A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, and A Quiet Place to Kill. Mario Ardorf, who we mentioned on the last episode when we were talking about What Have They Done to Your Daughters, plus he's in a ton of really great Eurocrime movies like Caliber 9. And Bond girl Barbara Bach, who was also in one of my favorite Gialli films, Black Belly the Tarantula. For those of you who have not seen this movie, well, you should probably pause the podcast and actually go watch it first. But if you're just going to soldier forth, here's a little plot for you. Greg Moore, an American journalist visiting Prague with his girlfriend Mira, is found dead. However, he's actually only temporarily paralyzed, but the coroner fails to realize this and proceeds to prepare him for an autopsy. While Moore awaits his doom, he tries to recollect what happened to him. It all starts when his girl disappears. He asks his friend, a local journalist, for help. They discover that this was just the latest in a series of disappearances of young pretty girls in the area. Their investigation leads them to a strange, high-profile private club whose affluent members practice odd, ritualistic orgies and bizarre dark rites. Yeah, that's pretty spot on, I think. I guess right out of the gate here, this is very, very different from a lot of Giallo fare. Now, granted, there's been Giallos that have cult elements and all that, but like, and I'll let you kind of comment on this, like, you know, it does feel a lot different than your typical Giallo, doesn't it?
It does. When it starts out with him being paralyzed, or see, I immediately go into it and go, wait, is he dead? And is he dead, but he somehow still has, he's like, oh my God, you can't hear me. And he's trying to talk to the person that's going to do the autopsy, stuff like that. And, and I'm already like, is this just a weird Giallo trope? And which is it? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he just paralyzed? Why is this happening? And I was very much focused on that.
It's a very strong way to start the film, like without a doubt, And uh, the thing about it is, like, like you said, like, is he actually dead? Is he actually paralyzed? Is he having a death dream? Is it like Sunset Boulevard where he's already dead and he's like narrating like what happened to him up until this point, kind of thing? And well, obviously we're going to dissect this here, pun sort of intended, I guess truly intended, because where this movie goes. But yeah, it's an interesting way to start a Giallo, let alone any movie. It's like an instant hook. And, there's some other things that kind of add to it. It's like, first, the location. It takes place in Prague, which is not very Giallo location. Giallos would shoot in like Italy, or they would go to England and like that kind of stuff. So it, like, being in Eastern Europe gives it a whole different vibe and tone. I saw a review on IMDb that referred this as a Kafka-esque Giallo, and I think that's a pretty spot on. I don't know how much you've like read Kafka over the years.
Yeah, most definitely. It definitely fits in Kafka. I even thought Twilight Zone. It's definitely a lot more Twilight Zone-esque than most other Giallos I've seen, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like in a way, like a really perfect feature-length Twilight Zone episode, especially the way it plays out in like the opening premise. And, kind of hitting that Kafka note, it's like, I don't know if you ever read the book The Trial, or you ever saw the Orson Welles movie, the Anthony Perkins, that's based on, where it's basically, I don't want to say they're the same, because in The Trial, Anthony Perkins' character, or whatever the character's name is in the book, is being put on trial for a crime. They don't know what they committed, but they're going through the whole process. And the way this is set up, it's like, this guy's like, I don't know why I'm paralyzed, why I'm here, like trying to go through the process of figuring out. So there's some parallels there. So it's a very different jump, because like when you think of Giallo, it's Agatha Christie and Edgar Wallace and things like that, instead of like Kafka. When you look at how the film looks overall, it's very stark, it's very cold looking, and that's a lot of that Prague location. The film plays out like Eyes Wide Shut, directed by Nicholas Roeg, with some, like, I'd say, Lynchian moments. Do you think that's kind of a fair comparison there, Nick?
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned Nicholas Roeg because we're for sure going to be talking about him a bunch during the next film.
Yeah, but for this one, like, the reason why I bring up Rogue is like basically kind of how the structure, and like, there's a lot of stream of conscious montage editing, like Nicholas Rogue did a lot of. He obviously did, things like Bad Timing or Eureka, which, like, not saying this is similar, but like a similar editing style is kind of used in this movie, where like, because the way the flashes are at him like trying to put together like what exactly happened, quick montages of things, and like, it's really well done. And it's like, it's kind of unexpected in a Giallo, because again, this is very atypical, just by a very, very long shot. Kind of back to like the whole conceit that Jean Sorel's character is still conscious and technically dead, and he's your protagonist. And like, as you said, you're instantly hooked, because where's this going? Like, because you don't really know if he's dead, if he's really paralyzed, or if this is just a flashback motif.
Well, let me jump in though. I want to say, in relation to me not liking Giallos or whatever. So when I'm watching this, I'm going, should I care about this or not? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if I get to the end of this fucking movie and I never know what was up with why I could hear this guy's thoughts and he was dead or not, I'm gonna be pissed. And like, so how much should I care about this aspect of the movie as it's being used as a vehicle to like show his memories, but why? Because that's not a thing.
Yeah.
You know?
You- basically because of your aversion to like giallos and like just weird shit that happens to them, you just thought like this would be just a plot point that doesn't pay off.
I was definitely worried about that. But again, I did really like this one. So
The other thing when I think of Jean Sorel in this movie is just like, God damn it, he's unrecognizable in a mustache.
right on. It's a
I
good
mean,
70s mustache. I mean,
it
it's a
is,
really good 70s mustache.
but it kind of takes away from because like he's usually like a dashing, good looking character or like a a suave guy. It kind of like takes him down to like regular dude. It's interesting because like when I think of him and like all those Fulci Giallos and that kind of stuff, like it's kind of a different performance. And I think I think if he didn't, it's gonna sound dumb to say this, if he didn't have the mustache that kind of like made him more like everyman, and it was just like him and his like normal dashing good looks, I don't think it would have worked. I mean, I could be wrong, but like the fact that like that mustache was enough to kind of alter him to be like, unrecognizable and like completely against type is like, it's, I mean, obviously he has a great performance in the movie. I'm not trying to say the mustache fucking carried him through the movie, but like it's that choice. And I think it's an interesting choice. And I think it worked really well. I mean, the other thing, which I think may be why you like this movie, even though like there's been giallos that run slow but illogical, this is a true slow burner. Like this is like of the Thai West and that kind of mold where like, it's just getting there and it's getting there, and like as things are unraveling and when it finally starts cooking, it's like, oh shit, it's getting fucking crazy. And I think that's a true slow burn in the real sense, and not just because like it's slowly plotted and like murder here, people talking for 10 minutes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the slow burn aspect, because both of these movies are a bit of a slow burn, like it helps build the sense of dread because like as it unfolds and you get more of those montages and memories and like flashbacks and all that stuff, while the on the other side of it is like he's getting prepped to be done as an autopsy in front of a bunch of people. It's like it builds that dread and that tension because it's like, is he gonna wake up and not get fucking cut up? You know?
Mhm.
Or on the other side, does it not pay off and he's just like, this is all bullshit, none of it's real, or it's the dream, or whatever, all the things you fucking hate about certain giallos. The other thing is it definitely hangs around that 70s paranoia thriller thing. Like, I might be clouded because I just recently watched Parallax View again. And like there's definitely a conspiracy angle, especially when you start looking into like there's been other girls that have been murdered and it could be tied together and you get the secret club and all that kind of stuff, like Illuminati, or going back to like what have you done to our daughters, like the fucking Jeffrey Epstein type crowd or whatever. Like, what is this called, what is this group? So like as a 70s paranoia thriller, I think it works on that level too. A lot of giallos don't delve into like paranoia, like it's all about tension, fear, and that kind of stuff, and this is like definitely very conspiracy heavy, if that makes sense.
Most definitely. There's a great payoff at the end.
Yeah, I actually can't wait to talk about the ending, but we got a little bit to get there. I also want to talk about in that opening when like they find the body, like the two characters at the beginning, the janitor dude and the guy with no legs. Really great characters, like really tone
Oh,
setting in a way.
I'm sorry, but when the guy came when the guy came out with no legs and he's like on that he's on like kind of like a wheeled platform or something. I'm
Hmm.
just like, oh, fucking Giallos, man. God damn it, Giallos. Just like only this guy would only be the way he comes cruising. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to be insensitive. Just the way he comes cruising up, I'm like, God damn it, Giallos. Am I wrong?
No, it's just like Giallo's like they're weird, like working class characters, and like, but like it's just this weird option of like you have this grumpy ass fucking janitor, and then like the dude with no legs that rolls up, and he's like, I didn't kill the guy, I just fucking found him. I guess we got to call someone to take care of it. Like
Yeah.
it it's kind of unique because like obviously it helps kick off the forward motion of the movie, but it's just like it's a really interesting way to start it, especially with like two like, you know, I think there's been other giallos or other movies where like some inconsequential like janitor or lawn keeper or whatever you want to call him finds a body, but you throw in that other guy and it's just like, and it's not to be insensitive, it just gives an extra edge to like something weird going on, like in the movie in general.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of plays to that David Lynch aspect where like David Lynch would have like just a weird person, character
Mm-hmm.
show up just to kind of augment like you're about to go on a weird ride.
Absolutely.
I mean, I could be just reading too much into it, but like, I think it just like it sets a tone and it sets it really early on. The other thing is like Barbara Bach, who's incredible with what little screen time she has in the movie. Like, but she's essentially the Hitchcockian MacGuffin of the story. And if you're not familiar with Hitchcock terminology, the MacGuffin is basically the thing that the characters in the movie care about, but it doesn't really matter to the audience. It's the thing that the characters do things for, but at the end of the day, the audience, it doesn't matter to the audience. It can be anything, which, kind of a little bit of a waste for her, but like it's a good MacGuffin because it's kind of like driving his obsession, like what happened to my girlfriend? What is going on here? And it kind of reminded me of, and obviously this film way predates what I'm bringing up here, but there's certain plot points in Under the Silver Lake. I don't know if you ever seen that movie, but there's certain parallels to Under the Silver Lake that I was picking up on this rewatch. Because obviously I've seen Under the Silver Lake a lot more recently than this movie. And it could also be because of Silver Lake's like attempts of Eyes Wide Shutting. So maybe that's part of it. But like the whole, if you haven't seen Under the Silver Lake, the guy's trying to find this girl that he kind of almost hooked up with, but didn't, who then disappears. So he goes like to try to figure out and kind of goes on like a, amateur sleuthing and kind of finds a seedy underbelly world of LA. So like in this movie, this guy's finding a seedy underbelly of Prague, sort of like Tom Cruise and Eyes Wide Shut, finding an underbelly of rich weirdos that have sex orgies, A lot of parallels. Might make for an interesting triple feature, I don't know. Now, Sorrell teams up with Ardolph and Thulin's character to help figure out what's going on. And he learns there's been, the other young girls have disappeared besides his girlfriend. So that gives like this narrative. Is it like a, kind of a giallo motif? Is someone knocking off pretty young girls in Prague kind of thing? But it never gets there, which is a kind of a point we should mention, is that this movie's not very graphically violent, even by like early giallo standards. Now, was that a turn on or turn off for you for this movie?
I cared enough about all the other elements that really didn't bother me.
Okay. I mean, because like that, there's a lot of reviews that complain about the lack of bloodletting and like that kind of stuff. But like, I don't think it needs it, because like, I think the mystery elements and how they play out are so fucking good in this movie that like, you don't even miss like the like giallo kills, the signature thing of the genre.
I cared so much about this guy communicating while potentially dead or paralyzed. I cared so much about that the like other people being murdered or whatever else I didn't need it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's not to say that people don't die in this movie, obviously. I think the mystery elements really carry, and obviously the big mystery of like the dude on the slab. Who the fuck? Well, you know who he is, but like, how'd he get there? Which is like the other thing that carries that whole entire narrative the whole time. And I'm kind of thinking of like when the movie starts kind of picking up, and there's a certain scene that I always flag because it's he's going to meet this old guy at a train station that has some information. And he sees the guy walking up, and then someone runs up behind the old guy, grabs him by the legs, and like tosses him over the side. And you get a decent dummy drop in there. But then like he goes and runs and finds the old guy like laying on the ground dying, and he's like, "What happened? Who are they?" And the guy just offers like these cryptic words. They don't fly. Which is some fucking straight up David Lynch shit right there.
True.
I mean, I don't. I guess they kind of like tie it back together, but like really it's just like, what the fuck does "they don't fly" mean? Because that dude just flew off a fucking like platform onto the ground near a train. All right, that's the other impressive thing about this dummy drop, because like it happens as the train is leaving. So like that's
Mhm.
timing. I mean, I'm sure they didn't do multiple takes and they just like whatever, however the dummy fell is how the dummy fell, but like that's production value right there.
It's perfectly right behind the train.
Yeah, it's so good. Um yeah, I like that we're focusing on the dummy drop in a movie that starts getting really, really dark from here on out, you know? I mean, the movie's kind of dark in general, but like, you know, after that scene where like he really is trying to start dive into this stuff and like as you're going, like as you're cross cutting between like the flashbacks, false memories, real memories, dream, whatever it ends up being, is that like the tension's ratchet up because they're getting ready to cut into him for an autopsy. And this kind of leads into like the climax of the movie, which is probably the biggest similarities or parallel to Eyes Wide Shut, which is the Club 99 stuff. Because that's the club where like all this is supposed to be tied into. And it's kind of funny because Club 99 sounds like some goth club that would be out here, you know?
Club 99 is not something I would think someone in what is this from 71 or something?
Yeah. I mean, maybe Prague was very big and like maybe there was proto industrial that like people went to this club for. Because like when I think Club 99, especially when it's spelled with a K, I think he's gonna walk in and like fucking Ministry's playing or some shit.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just stretching for a fucking joke. I don't know. But you know, the thing is, once Sorrell actually gets in that club, that's where it really ratchets up, and that's when you finally get that whole cult reveal, which is kind of hinted and alluded to. And, you know, this is where I feel like if Gastaldi actually had a hand in this, this might be here because, like, there's a lot of shades of all the colors of the dark here.
Yeah.
Kind of even to like the ritualistic sex or, you know, sacrifice or whatever's all going down. The way it's presented is interesting because it's all very like hallucinatory. And you don't know if he's like drugged or like this is just like a something that he's just making up as he's seeing. But, you know, it also kind of harkens back to what we were talking about in Daughters on the last episode, where it's like the elite are controlling shit again. Except this time it's like Illuminati occult level. You know what I mean? So it's a nice it's a it's a twist that you kind of see is coming, just because like they talk about the whole movie, but like it's kind of interesting that it actually pays off, and then he pays the price for going there. You know?
Mm-hmm. You got too close to the fire.
Yeah, when you get too close to fire, you get fucking burned. Which is what happened to Sorrell, because this is when you finally find out what happened to him. And your whole thing, like, is this just some bullshit like plot point that's not going to pay off? It finally pays off because they basically you find out he's been hypnotized by this cult, and the only way he can awake from this is once he's buried in the ground, which means like no one's putting a body straight into the ground. You're going to get some kind of embalming, autopsy, that kind of thing. And that's kind of where the movie heads at the end, is that he's on that slab and he realizes like he has to do something. And this is a really great, like, kind of, you said Twilight Zone. I think there's a really good Twilight Zone moment where like he's trying to wake himself up and his hand starts moving.
Mm-hmm.
And but no one can see it because the hand that's moving is like faced away from like, I guess where they were doing this autopsy was like a medical school type of thing. So there's a bunch of people like surrounded, like looking down at it, and his hand starts moving, but like no one in the crowd could see it, but the guy that's going to do the autopsy can. And then you'd notice the guy doing the autopsy is part of the cult, and all those dudes from the cult are sitting up in the bleachers watching this shit go down. So the first thing they do as he's trying to wake up and get out is they take a little blade, stab him right in the heart, kill him. Fucking, I don't even think Twilight Zone got that bleak, you know?
Right.
I mean, the film just ends with like Thulin's character like screaming and it just freeze frames. Like, I don't know if she consciously or unconsciously realized what happened, like, that he was alive and trying to fight all the way through that movie. And it's like, there's no hope. You're just done, dude.
Yep, that's how I read it. I thought she saw his hand move, and but it was too late.
Yeah. I mean, the way it's shot is like, it kind of feels like, does she see it? Does she not see it? Is she complicit in letting this happen? Does she feel guilty after it happens? Like, this movie has more, it leaves you with more questions than answers at the end. Like, obviously, the original conceit of him being on the morgue slab, is he dead or alive? Obviously, he was alive. He was hypnotized. And then he goes through all that to only become a body on a morgue slab. I mean, it's really a gut punch of a movie, and it's just like, knowing the ending and rewatching it, it still hit pretty hard. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I'm actually, this is one I'm now now that now that I've finished it and got all my answers and know what the film was about. Now I'm ready to actually rewatch it. Now that I can kind of watch it from a different angle, see things that I may have missed because I gave too much of a shit about him.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, but it's a movie that it will play out differently every time you watch it, because there's going to be something else that's going to hook you in. It's going to be like, are there weird clues that set things up, the whole entire flashbacks or like that kind of stuff? Because like, it's an interesting movie that you can focus on different things and get something out of it that's completely different each viewing, which is a amazing thing for a movie to do. Obviously, if people were looking for kind of a comfort repeat rewatch type thing, this is not the movie for that. But like, I love this movie because like, it dares to go pretty big, especially for a Giallo, which I guess we should talk about, since a lot of people, there's a mixed school on this. Like, is it a Giallo? Is it not a Giallo kind of thing? And I think there's enough of a mystery element in kind of like not exactly on the nose Giallo things, but I think there's enough things happening in the movie. The mystery narrative, a lot of the actors have been in Giallos before, the way it kind of plays out, the cult aspect, even though like Giallos didn't have the market corner on like cults in movies, obviously. It's all coming from the Rosemary's Baby end of the spectrum. But like, I think there's just enough things in there, but the way it's presented is like, it's very unique, and like, no one's made another Giallo even close to this. You know, I mean, I hadn't rewatched this movie in probably, I don't know how many years, and I always liked it, and I always like kind of ranked Who Saw Her Die a little bit ahead of it, but upon rewatching both of these, I kind of mark them both pretty even now. Like, I think they're both top tier Giallos for completely different reasons. I don't know. Final thoughts on this, Nick?
Yeah, it's great. I think I also like Who Saw Her Die just a little more, but we'll talk about that. Yeah, this one's great, man. Maybe it's not a Giallo. Maybe maybe that's the argument on my side then. It's not a Giallo. I really liked it. No, but this yeah, it's great. I if you're a Giallo fan, absolutely search this one out.
Yeah, one last thing I want to talk about before we move off this film is the Ennio Morricone score, which is really different for what he was doing during this era. His score reminded me of in this movie was kind of like what Howard Shore was doing for David Cronenberg when they started working together. I'm thinking like the Brood and Scanners era, like just something in like the kind of dark orchestral tone to it. Like, it's not like a lot of the Giallo scores, which Morricone was making at the time, were really psychedelic, or like, it's not like his spaghetti Western scores. Like, I'm sure he's done other scores that are probably in this vein, but like, rewatching and listening to that score, like, it's completely unique and atypical to anything I can think of off the top of my head that he's done. Like, so much so that like, I didn't remember that he did the score to it. And then his name popped up. I was like, oh shit, I guess he did do the score to it. And then it's like, listening to it, it's like, but did he? Because it's just so different. Like, there's certain Morricone quirks and cues that like kind of pop up throughout like his discography. And like, there's a few here, but like, he doesn't really lean on it. It's a completely original score. But we're going to take a quick commercial break. But when we return, we're going to talk more about Aldo Lado's Giallos here on the Cinematic Void podcast.
That is not sufficient proof when you say the girl was wearing nothing when she left.
And yet I've known it to happen that someone suddenly decides to move out. They leave. There's no warning. And no arguing.
And let me say this to you. They'd better, because I'll write a story and blast every last one of you for murder.
Why did you say murder?
And the part that beats me is how the hell you could care for someone like her.
You know that both you and the girl took drugs.
You're lucky. She's not in a morgue with a broken neck. Who did it? Do you know him?
They don't fly. Don't let them fly.
J&B Scotch Whisky, dove conta il carattere.
Welcome back. We've been talking about the Giallo films of Aldo Lado here on the Cinematic Void podcast. Up next is, his second Giallo, as well as the second film that he directed. It stars George Lazenby, who was a former James Bond. We had a former Bond girl in the previous movie. Now we have a former James Bond. Anita Strindberg, who is in a bunch of Sergio Martino Gialli, including Case of the Scorpion's Tail and Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, as well as Lucio Fulci's A Lizard in a Woman's Skin. It also stars Nicolette Elmi, who is probably one of the most quintessential Italian children actors, because, she's you've seen her a lot of stuff. She's in Deep Red, A Bay of Blood, and she was also had her own starring vehicle, The Night Child, which was directed by Massimo Dallamano, who we talked about a lot on the last episode. This film, actually, did I even say what this film is? I did not. The film we are talking about is Who Saw Her Die from 1972. The film was written by Francesco Brilli, who, incidentally enough, directed A Perfume of the Lady in Black, which we just screened in theater, and was co-written by his Perfume co-writer Massimo D'Avorac, as well as Aldo Lado, who did some, I think it said like he contributed to the screenplay, whatever that means. I don't know if he just took a screenplay and did a little bit of a rewrite. The film, once again, has a very amazing and, dare I say, unique score by Ennio Morricone, much different than his previous score for Lado, and we'll talk at length about that a little bit later. And for those of you who have not seen the movie, here's a little plot for you. Between a 4-year gap in the murder of a young girl, the daughter of a well-known sculptor is discovered dead, and her parents conduct an investigation, only to discover they are much out of their depth. And right off the bat, I think this is apparent to both of us, and anyone who's seen these movies, this is more of a classic Giallo style compared to Glass Dolls. Would you agree?
Most definitely. It's got a few of the old Giallo tropes.
Yeah, I mean, this one does have a black glove killer, which kind of a unique flip on it, because it's a black glove killer that's wearing, like, I want to say black woven gloves, which is a little off the beaten path. But, even though this is more of a typical Giallo, I think this is another atypical Giallo. Like, on the surface, very Giallo-like, but it does a lot of things that Giallos don't normally do or would do. And for one, again, it's another slow burner, and not in that Giallo funky plotting kind of way. Like, everything that's set up is meant to be paid off, And Lado basically, pushes to build tension and atmosphere the whole time. Let's talk about that opening murder, which takes place in France in the snow, which is pretty goddamn unique for a Giallo, because when you think of Giallos, do you think of snow?
Nope. I don't think of skiing, any of this. Sledding. Not a Giallo.
No, and like that's why like that opening is so good, because it's just like you feel like you're out of your element already, which is like you're in a locale that isn't typically Giallo country, and there's fucking snow, and you have that murder, and you get blood in the snow and all that stuff. It's really, really well done. But after that, the film was shot and takes place in Venice, which is a very effective location for a Giallo, or a Giallo adjacent film, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Another thing I've noticed that Lado has did in both these movies is that he gave his leading men mustaches. George Lazenby, who, again, he was James Bond. James Bond doesn't have a fucking mustache. In this movie, he's got a mustache. And I read somewhere that apparently he lost like 30 pounds to play this role. I don't know why. It doesn't seem like a real method thing to have to do, but like, he did it. And again, he looks unrecognizable, just like Jean Sorel looked unrecognizable. He only played Bond once, which was on Her Majesty's Secret Service, which that was kind of a tongue twister for me to say. I actually had to look up how the proper title is because I had like 8 different versions of it that we have since cut out that is nowhere near what this actual title is. But yeah, he played James Bond in that. But like, again, Lado takes like what you consider like a dashing leading man, slaps a mustache on him, changes him, makes him an everyman. And it works again for this movie. And I think Lazenby gives a really great performance like throughout, even though it should be mentioned in at least the English dub version, that's not his own voice. Someone else dubbed him in. I don't know if he didn't come back for his own looping or whatever the issue was, but like that is not his voice. And obviously he didn't dub himself in like the Italian version or any other language. But performance wise, he's fucking terrific in it. And, you know, the way the movie works in its giallo-ness, you get some close calls early on, like his daughter, who's like, there's a near murder scene when she's going to get ice cream in that, the Black Glove Killer's coming. And every time the Black Glove Killer comes, they have a soundtrack, which I think we should talk about. I think we were originally going to save the Morricone stuff until later, but I think it's a good point to bring it out, which is that kids chorus thing he does throughout the movie. The la 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 thing. And if you haven't heard that score or haven't seen the movie, check that out. Like, it's brilliant because it's just like, it becomes very hypnotic. And you were talking about the score a little bit before we started recording.
Yeah, it has like a weird echo effect on it that makes it extra creepy. Like I feel like I've heard these kind of child chorus parts in other giallos, but for some reason in this one, again with the echo, it just makes it extra creepy. The way it kind of trails off in the end, it makes it a little psychedelic. And when I was watching it, it made me curious. Like, what was there a trend in giallos as far as the soundtrack goes, where there was this like child's chorus, or or is this special?
Now, I can't think of the other movies he's done in it, but Morricone's definitely done child choruses before in other movies. I think he's even used them in a few spaghetti westerns at times. And I think it just depends on the movie, but like I don't think he's done it quite like this. And we were talking about this earlier, like many years ago, I directed a fake Giallo Christmas trailer that you worked on, and I think I have a small role in, and actually did a little music for. But there's a cue in the movie that I got my friend Tara, who does I Speak Machines, who just did the score to Travis Stevenson's Jacob's Wife. And I would DP'd a film that her and her husband, who are collectively I Speak Machines, had made. So I called in a favor for her to do a little piece of music for my Giallo trailer. And she's like, well, what kind of vibe you want? And I sent her the fucking main cue for Who Saw Her Die. And that's what she emulated to. I don't want to say to a T, but like it's the same vibe without being exactly the same, if that makes sense. I mean, the thing about this score is like all the great Morricone scores is that he comes up with a couple cues that just make it stand out. And like, I know there's probably a certain segment of people that like giallos or, you know, genre movies probably hate this kind of score because they do play it a fucking lot in this movie. But to me, I think every time they do it, it's really effective. So, you know, that Morricone score is just amazing. And the way he uses it, like Lado uses it, is just really, really well done. And, you know, we talked about like that opening, or not the opening, but that near murder scene with the Lazenby's daughter is going to get the ice cream, and like it almost happens, and the music stops the second like he steps out, and the killer like diverts directions so they don't get caught. But then later, when the killer does get the girl, like it's actually, I don't want to say cross-cut, but it's kind of like, well, you're gonna probably be happy I bring this up because I know you're a fan of this movie. Like I was thinking, rewatching this now, I was thinking of Antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's that scene in Antichrist where they're having sex and the baby like falls out the window or whatever.
Yeah.
Lazenby goes and hooks up with like not his wife because his wife is estranged or divorced. I'm not really clear what the hell their relationship is in this movie. I mean, it might be clear and I just might be misremembering, but like he's hooking up with some other lady that he doesn't want his daughter to know he's hooking up with. So she's playing outside with a bunch of other kids when the killer gets her. So rewatching this and having since seen Antichrist, it's like, that's kind of the same thing. It's like you're basically having sex, allowing your child to die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a dark twist because then it just builds this whole guilt complex, which is throughout this whole entire movie. And then his wife finally shows up, and it's Anita Strindberg, and like this is when we're going to really talk about more Nicholas Roeg here, because there's a scene where like Strindberg and Lazenby, who are estranged, divorced, or whatever, hook up because their daughter's dead, and it's reminiscent of a scene in a movie that came out a year later, which is Don't Look Now. So it's kind of hard not to compare and contrast because both these movies have grief sex scenes, you know.
Mm-hmm. There's that. There's even there's a scene where he falls and he's kind of hanging from this rafter. And there's there's of course the more famous scene from Don't Look Now where he's on the scaffolding and it falls and he's like swinging for his life. I mean, he's not up there as long in this one, but I don't know. I found that to be a kind of a similarity there. I don't know. There are plenty.
I mean, Venice, they're both shot, both take place in Venice. I mean, even down to like Donald Sutherland's job and Don't Look Now, he's a architect and Lazenby's a sculptor. I mean, obviously those aren't the same things, but it involves art and building and that kind of stuff. And it makes you question, like, did Nicholas Roeg see this movie before making Don't Look Now? I know we talked about this when we did Don't Look Now on the Giallo adjacent episode, but we didn't go into too much depth on it because I think neither of us had, well, you had never seen it and I hadn't watched it in a while, Who Saw Her Die. And watching it now, it's just like, obviously there's differences in this movie, but like, there's definitely like, there's a through line there. And it's like, did Rogue see it? Did someone on the production see it? Because like, I don't know. Or is it just coincidence? Is it a Giallo coincidence that these movies have very similar themes, vibes, and all that?
It's I don't know. I don't buy it.
Don't buy it? You think Rogue saw it?
I don't know. It's like Home Alone and what's that French one?
Dial Code Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They came out around the same time, right?
Yeah. And like, I think it was like a year apart. So it's like, you know, depending when the production was, this and that, like, is it possible? But I mean, like, you know, Don't Look Now as a Giallo adjacent film that takes place in Venice. And Who Saw Her Die is a Giallo film that takes place in Venice that was shot a year before. And like, I don't know. I mean, most of the discussion about like the inspiration, all that comes from like, you know, people online. But I guess we'll never really know the truth behind it. But like, I do think it's interesting, and like, you know, obviously, Don't Look Now has things that this movie doesn't have, like red raincoat girls, dwarfs, that kind of stuff. And it goes in a little bit different direction, and some of that like fragmented imagery that's in Short Night of Glass Dolls is more in Don't Look Now, whereas in Who Saw Her Die doesn't really have that stuff. Which is another, I think it's a good time to like, now that we've done the Don't Look Now comparison thing, is the compare and contrast like Aldo Lado's style between these two movies. And if you didn't know better, you might think completely different director made this.
Even with the score being made by the same person, the scores are so different. So yeah, I would definitely think this was made by a completely different team, and of course it's not.
And it's not to say that it. I guess what the thing I'm saying is Lado was a bit of a chameleon, and it's you go a very stark style that's very you would think would be a signature style that you would carry your next movie, and then you completely flip the script. And again, like I said, this is more classically Giallo than the previous one, but he does. There's a few traits that carry through them both, but stylistically, they're, I'd say, very, very far apart. Now, this movie has probably my favorite scene that involves giving exposition to the audience, which is that ping pong scene where Lazenby goes and finds the guy that lives on the property of where the first girl was murdered, and they play ping pong. And obviously, it doesn't matter what they're doing; it's an exposition scene to try to get information. But I give it credit for being ping pong because who the fuck is what this movie needs? A ping pong scene. And it kind of makes the exposition dump entertaining, because when you watch a lot of giallos, the way they do is just someone sitting at a bar, someone sitting outside, someone walks up, it's oh, let me give you all this information on a park bench kind of thing. It's a really unique choice. I don't know where it came from, but god damn it, I like it. Similar to Glass Dolls, this movie's murder sequences aren't really gory. They're pretty restrained. There's a little more blood in this one than, Glass Dolls, but the one murder I think is the best on-screen murder is the guy that owns all the birds that gets stabbed with the scissors. And, the killer stabs him and then lets all the birds out. And it's man, that's a big fuck you at the end. It's I killed you, and now all your birds are out. Suck on that. I mean, that's probably the goriest murder in the movie, and it's literally just a pair of scissors getting stabbed in someone's chest and stomach area. But the murders are still pretty good. There's definitely the strangulation one and that kind of stuff. But again, very restrained, which might be the one through line between Glass Dolls and this movie, is that the murders aren't that graphic, but they're still impactful. Now, this is the second movie that we've talked about for January Giallo that features a fake priest. However, unlike the previous fake priest, which was in Solange, this one's more of a pivotal character because they actually think he's a fucking priest and he's out and about. He's not a red herring, oh, we're looking for a bearded priest. This guy's in the forefront, all that. So when you get the reveal of him basically being in drag with those gloves and stuff, and they basically what happens to the ending is this is why I really love this movie. And it's for this superficial reason. You get a fucking firewalk into a dummy drop.
Truly one of the best dummy drops I've ever seen, actually.
It is really good. And the fact that your lead in is firewalk, dummy drop, chef's kiss. The only other there's
this Scooby-Doo, pull the mask off, reveal it's the priest. I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you kids. To flaming, to falling out the window, perfection.
It is. The flaming dummy drop is such a rarity. There's obviously one in X-Ray, which I love. But this one, no disrespect to X-Ray, which is one of my favorite slashers. This is I think it's a top shelf dummy drop. It's much better than one in X-Ray, and it's a fitting conclusion. And I guess this is also where Glass Dolls and Who Saw Her Die differs, that you get some closure out of it. But is it really closure? Because their kid's dead. But they kind of oh, I guess we're back together, happy. But because we stopped the killer, I guess that's a kind of a positive resolution. I mean,
it tells you his motive, whether it's, it's just a good payoff there at the end.
It's a good payoff. I do think it's like when you think a little too much about it, when like they go gallivanting off, like, yeah, everything's fine now. We stopped the killer. And it's like, your daughter's still fucking dead, guys. Speaking of that, like, child murder in Giallo, while there was kind of a rare thing. And like, there's not many that really tackled this really hard. Like, the only one I can, off the top of my head, just think of is Lucio Fulci's Don't Torture a Duckling, which also had like the Catholic priest angle in there as well. And it's kind of interesting, like how often Giallos question or mock or use some form of Catholicism as like the villain, even if it's just like it's not a real priest, but hiding behind Catholicism to do evil stuff kind of thing. So this movie has both of those things, and I don't know. It's that the child murder in it is actually really striking. It's really sad, and the reason why I'm bringing it up now is because like how much that ending is like a 180 from like all that in a way, because it's kind of a uplifting, jet setting ending, more like fun loving Giallo endings. But it feels earned. I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, totally right. Just a great payoff with the villain, and then just happiness. It's
Happiness. Thank God it's over. I mean, maybe I'm just skewed by the fact that they had the priest or the fake priest on fire into a dummy drop. Like, that maybe that's clouding my vision. Maybe I'm reading it as they're very more jovial, as they're like at the end of the film than they maybe should be.
It's funny, they're actually yelling the ending of the film to them as they're sailing away, and they probably can't hear them.
Yeah,
they probably can't hear them at all.
It's like, I think the last line of the movie is like, he was not really a priest. And like,
Yeah.
It's like, whatever, we're on our fucking boat. We're out of here. I mean, yeah, this is probably definitely drifting more into like Giallo logic with that, but like, it doesn't skew from the fact that I think this is a really well done thriller, really well constructed, excellent direction. All the shot, like the cinematography is like really, really great. And of course that Ennio Morricone score. It's top shelf. Like, at the end of the day, like, I came in liking this movie slightly more, and my opinion didn't change. I still like this movie a lot. Short Night of Glass Dolls, I ended up liking almost as equal just because of how different they are from each other.
Oh man, I have to mention my favorite scene. This there's a scene where there's like, you think there's a glove killer in the apartment, and it's like a total joke. It's awesome.
I mean, I think
it was like the cleaner or whatever. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
assuming everybody that's listening to this has watched this, but this is just a great joke. It's just like, all right.
Oh
all
yeah,
right.
that scene is great.
Don't think you're better than this movie. This movie knows exactly what it is.
Exactly. Like, I that this is probably a good time to talk about our final thoughts on Aldo Lado in general. It's like, I feel like, kind of like Dallamano, he's kind of underrated when he's probably made like Who Saw Her Die is at least a top 10 Giallo.
Mm-hmm.
Without question. I don't think either of us are going to have an argument about that, or anyone that like loves these kind of movies is going to have an argument about that. I think he's kind of underrated, and it's like, I kind of wish he made more, but at the same time, it's like, if he had made more, would they have been as good? Because where else could he have gone with it? Like, you did the most unusual, atypical Giallo possible, which might take it to the point to some people that it's not even a Giallo. And then you do one that's clearly in that Argento formula, the Black Glove Killer stuff, and you subvert it and do something completely different within that. Where do you go from there? So maybe it's better off he didn't make one. Or another Giallo, I should say. I highly recommend both of these films. I also highly recommend the Night Train Murders, which we were going to originally talk about, but again, I kind of felt like it's more on the Last House on the Left, like knockoff train. I guess it's a train movie. It's on a train. Whatever. I don't know. We'll talk. We'll talk about those kind of movies at some point later this year, or at some point. I don't want to say later this year because I don't want to. Then we have to do it if I say it. At some point, we will talk about it. It may be this year. It might not be this year. But at some point, we'll talk about Last House on the Left movies.
One day we'll do our train episode.
Yeah, we'll just do all fucking train movies. We're going to take one last commercial break here, but when we return, it's going to be Read, Watch, and Listen here on the Cinematic Void Podcast.
The quiet moments belong to J&B. The Scotch whiskey, so rare, it whispers.
Welcome back. It's now time for on the Cinematic Void Podcast, where we talk about all the things we've been reading, watching, and or listening to since the last time we recorded a podcast. It's been a couple weeks, Nick. What have you been reading, watching, and or listening to?
All right, for reading, I've still been making my way through this book, Tampa, by Alyssa Nutting. I talked about it on the last podcast, and it is a fictional book about a woman in her 20s who becomes a middle school teacher, kind of in order to have sex with middle school children. So that's a strange book, but yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. And I also just got over at Secret Headquarters over in Silver Lake, I picked up a graphic novel called Project MK Ultra: Sex, Drugs, and the CIA.
Does it mention Edgewood Arsenal in there?
Well, I haven't actually read this yet, but I'm just jumping into it. But yeah, it looks super sick. So I'm excited to rip through that.
Because you know, like where we were kind of near where we both grew up, like one of the army bases was the home of like all that LSD testing.
Oh, I think you told me about this before. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll put a pin on this so when you actually read it, we can talk about that. Not that
Cool,
anyone
yeah,
else
sure.
not that anyone else needs to care about it, but like maybe you want to know about LSD testing.
Oh, that shit's interesting, man. All right, so for watch, I just got 2 Criterion Blu-rays of The Cranes Are Flying and Letter Never Sent. Both are from the 50s, post-Stalin Soviet Union films. I guess The Cranes Are Flying is a little more well-known, but both of these films are incredible. Cranes Are Flying was first, and it's the I don't know the cinematographer's name, but it's the same director and cinematographer for both of these films, and they're beautiful and incredible. And I feel like they're must sees if you love film in general. Fuck, I mean, I was blown away. I saw Cranes Are Flying actually last Sunday at the American Cinematheque at Los Feliz 3 for the Sunday print edition, where they show black and white films in 35 millimeter. So I got to see The Cranes Are Flying. By the time this episode comes out, this will have already happened, but they are doing an encore screening on the 15th, and I'm probably going to go to that as well. And even though I own the Blu-ray, I think I have to go see it again in 35 millimeter while I have the opportunity. So yeah, highly recommended both those films. And then I also just watched this film, Jim, that you will hate for sure. The Moment of Truth, and it is a Criterion title as well by Francesco Rossi, an Italian filmmaker, I believe. And it is a film about bullfighting. And even despite being from 65, it has that kind of, underdog sports story arc of Rocky and even Raging Bull and something like that, where it's just the underdog, whatever. And again, it's about bullfighting. It's the star of the film is an actual bullfighter, and all the bullfighting scenes in the movie are real. So it shows it's one of the goriest films I've ever seen. But all of that gore is bulls.
See, I would only watch it if the Bulls would win.
I don't want to spoil the film. But yeah, I think it's, you know, in like a historical aspect, I think it's a great film, and it does not ever, it doesn't at all, and from like some of the reviews I've read, people really criticize this film due to the fact that it's very firmly neutral. It casts no opinion. You know, people are mad. It doesn't condemn it at all. But you know, if that sounds like it's your thing, I mean, it's a great, beautiful film. But yeah, it's rough. It's rough, man.
I mean, in Spain, there's like this cultural like significance to bullfighting and all that. Like, I think it's almost like on a spiritual level.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean I like or agree with it, but you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Not some movies aren't made for me. You don't like
There you go.
you don't like certain giallos. I don't like movies where people fucking murder bulls.
Indeed. And last night I watched Army of Shadows by, is it Jean Pierre Melville?
That is correct.
Is it Jean Pierre?
Yeah, Jean Pierre.
Yeah, a beautiful, slow film.
But if you stick in a half-ass murder mystery, it's like I can't fuck with this slow movie.
I can't do with this shit. Yeah.
But like an art house fucking French movie, like 4 or 5 fucking stars.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, goddamn, it's a powerful film with no Scooby-Doo mystery. Anyway, listen, I have been listening to a lot of like codeine and karate and like kind of slow music lately. Have you ever get into codeine White Birch?
Never really listened to codeine.
Oh man, it's I guess, I don't know if it was called this at the time, but of course, you know, journalists or someone came up with the term slow core, and that's kind of, I don't like it.
You don't like the terms. Would you prefer Quaalude core?
But yeah, I've been listening to just like some slower indie rock stuff from the 90s, and I remember that there was a band called Low that was kind of always in that scene, and I never really checked them out or never got into it. But so I had checked out their latest 2 records. There's one from last year called Hey What, and the one before it is called Double Negative. And they're both like, I don't know, it's just like weird ass slow indie rock with like male and vocal harmonies kind of throughout the whole songs. But the music, which I assume is just like guitar based synth, there's no drums, and it's just produced so that all the instruments just sound like noise, like static, and it's just fucking like, it's a weird, it's almost like it's a weird ass noise record with vocals. I don't know. I've gotten like super into it. I just like found these records and I got super into. I've just been listening to them over and over. It's just like super weird. It's cool, like a kind of orchestral vocals over just like weird sort of melodic noise.
Now you said Low, not Slow. There's not a band called Slow.
No, it's Low, LOW.
So
and
it's
they've been
like
around forever, since like the early 90s.
Yeah, because I haven't listened to Low in like, fuck, I can't even think about it. Like, you know, they were always kind of like very quiet, but they also had the trade-off male and female like vocals or harmonies and stuff like that. There's a story I read about them many years ago. They played South by Southwest, like upstairs, and they were so quiet that the death metal band playing below them, like a different stage, was like drowning them out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, but I do have a few Low records. I haven't listened in a while, but one of my favorite things there was an In the Fish Tank series. I don't remember if you remember that, where it was like 2 artists would collaborate together. They did one with the band The Dirty Three, which I think Warren Ellis, who plays with Nick Cave, is in. And it's really good. And they do a cover of Neil Young's Down by the River. And it's like way like, it's way more, it's I don't want to say it's way more emotional, but it strikes a different kind of emotion with it. It kind of like flips the song in a way, because you know that Neil Young song "Down by the River I Shot My Baby," and like it kind of
Mhm.
it feels like it's coming from the, as we talk about out of body experiences or people talking about from being dead or whatever, that kind of vibe. It kind of flips
Mhm.
the song. So, sorry, I'm hijacking your low thread
No,
here.
all good. But yeah, I had never really heard any of that early stuff. But these latest two records, I kind of did some digging, and as far as I could tell, these two sound like this, whereas nothing before it really does. Um, and maybe one of the newer ones is was produced by Bonnie Vare. I don't know. They've had some like strange producers for some of these records too. I don't know, but check them out if that sounds like it's your thing.
Is that how you actually say that? I always thought it was Bon Iver. Man, I'm a
I
fucking.
think it's yes, I think it's Bonnie Vare. And then there was like because when he first started winning awards, I remember there were like young kids tweeting, "Who's Bonnie Bear?"
Learn something new every day.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I've been listening to.
As for me, reading, I was on a reading streak for a bit. I still got a bunch of film books that I got that I just haven't touched in the last few days, or I guess at this point, a few weeks, but whatever. Watching, I've been on a tear because I started actually using my letterbox or the Cinematic Void letterbox for more than just keeping track of the movies I've screened. I've started keeping track of the things I've been watching so far this year and try to do little reviews and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to list everything because, like, I was on a fucking tear. You were like, damn, dude, you've been watching a fuck ton of movies lately. I'm like, I actually had the time to do it. I'm probably not going to be that prolific for too much longer, but here's a few of the things I've been watching. I started off New Year's Day by watching Ruggero Deodato's House on the Edge of the Park with David Hess and John Morgan, one of the great sleazy Italian exploitation movies, classic video nasty, and of course, since we've already been mentioning a lot, another one of those Last House on the Left type movies. So whenever we do that episode, we'll be definitely talking about this one. I also finally cracked open Vinegar Syndrome's restoration of Flesh for Frankenstein. I really love the what Severin did for Blood for Dracula. You know, same filmmaker, Paul Morrissey. I still like Blood for Dracula better, but I think this restoration looks top notch. You know, I think both restorations for these movies. I'm not trying to make the labels compete against each other or whatever, but at the end of the day, I still like Blood for Dracula better than Flesh for Frankenstein, but still a good movie. I've also been working my way through the All the Haunts Be Ours box set that was curated by Kayla Janice for the Woodlands Dark documentary. Bunch of different folk horror films from around the world. I've been kind of working in reverse. I started with the two BBC movies and work my way towards the front of the box set, which is Eyes of Fire and stuff like that. I've also been on a bit of a 70s film kick. I watched Busting with Elliot Gould and Robert Blake. Have you ever seen that one?
No, I haven't.
You'll enjoy it. It's a 70s vice cop movie. Definitely very, very un-PC. There's a great, like very, very un-PC. So if you don't want to hear people say really terrible stuff and they're the heroes, can't recommend that one. But like there's a really amazing, they shot at the marketplace that's downtown. There's a really incredible action sequence in there. And I hadn't seen the movie in a while, but like rewatching is like, God damn, that is so fucking good. So if you're the 70s cop movies, definitely check that out. Speaking of 70s cop movies, I also watched The Stone Killer starring Charles Bronson. This is him and Michael Winner. Michael Winner did Death Wish and that kind of stuff. This is their take on Dirty Harry in a way. There's also a Hall of Fame dummy drop in this movie. So if you're looking for dummy drops, the Stone Killer delivers. And speaking of Bronson, and I also rewatched, I should say, Mr. Majestic, where Bronson plays a watermelon farmer who's being harassed by some mobsters. And all I gotta say is, don't fuck with Bronson's melons. And then, kind of to wrap things up here, I went on a Alan J. Pakula kind of 70s paranoia thriller marathon of sorts. I rewatched The Parallax View, Clute, and the more as I've rewatched Clute, I realized we fucked up really bad and not including it in the Giallo adjacent episode. So I feel like I don't want to say this year, but I'll say I'm just going to make up episodes that we're going to eventually do at some point. But we're going to do another Giallo adjacent episode, and I think we're going to talk at length about Clute because it's fucking great. I've actually watched it twice this year already.
Nice.
It's like I always liked that movie, but like all the Pakula movies have been like hitting really hard for some reason. So it's like it's been really enjoyable rewatches. And of course, you can't watch the first two without watching the third one, which is All the President's Men.
Mm-hmm.
Getting in that Watergate. Listen wise, I put on, how do you describe this? Like a psychedelic grindcore band? It's Plutocracy. Would you say psychedelic grindcore or just like really fucked up?
Man, I never thought of them as being psychedelic. I never thought of it that way. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that I somehow never considered that.
I mean, I'm gonna say, like, if you never heard Plutocracy, like, members went on to be in bands like Agents of Satan and No Less, and of course Spaz, and like it's grindcore, but like it gets really weird, and I think it's because they allegedly, or I guess been confirmed, they all smoked a lot of PCP while making the music, so. But like the reason why I say psychedelic, maybe not the early stuff, but the later stuff after they had done No Less, which definitely dips its toes into like psych rock.
Mm-hmm.
Like those later records, which are the two I listened to, which are Sniping Pigs and All for the Pigs. Like there's definitely some, I don't want to say real psychedelic interludes, but like there's some definitely like psychedelic like guitar noodling mixed in with the fucking blast beats and insane screaming. Like, I don't know if I can recommend Plutocracy to anyone because like you get all kinds of vocal ranges, especially the one guy did this like the high pitched stuff, and then like I think No Less capitalized on that high pitched voice and like shoved it in more. Plutocracy's not as heavy in it, but like different gang vocals, crazy grindcore, lots of like samples, lots of hip hop samples, interludes, that kind of stuff. If you're into weird grindcore or weird metal music that likes hip hop samples and a little bit of psych rock, check out some Plutocracy. I also listened to the soundtrack to the Scary of 61st by Eli Kessler, I believe is his name. And I guess I'd say he's electronic or noise artist. I don't really know that much. I love this movie, and I was like, you know what, I want to kind of listen to the soundtrack. And when we talk about Giallo adjacent and stuff like that, this soundtrack kind of reminded me of some of those weirder Morricone soundtracks. Not saying exactly like it, but like in the same kind of vibe, like sparse, weird instruments and that kind of stuff.
I think that Eli plays in I think it's called 10 Tricks Point Never. Like it's kind of really a solo project of this one guy, but he plays with a full band, and I'm pretty sure that the guy Eli that did the Scary of 61st soundtrack maybe plays in the live band, and like played on like I don't know, one of those like late night TV shows I saw fairly recently, and they played, and I think he was playing with them. That I don't know. It's that it's the Scary 61st, so he's in the Red Scare extended universe. So I maybe he like is Eli. I think maybe Eli is the one that just had a baby with Anna. I don't know. We can cut all this out. as I talk about Jim DeHaven being in the Cinematic Void extended universe. By
the way, because we're gonna leave all this shit in. Bruce Holacek pointed out that Jim DeHaven now has a letterbox, and the second I found that out, I sent that to you. This has no bearing on anyone outside of me, Nick, and Bruce Holacek. But if you want to follow the legendary Jim DeHaven, his username is the DeHaven. See what he's listening to, or not listening. See what he's watching or whatever. He'll probably get freaked out and then delete it and then go back to obscurity. But
And that's the DeHaven, TheDehaven, the DeHaven.
There you go. So now you can get some context from a random person from Maryland that we talk about. Getting back on topic here. I mean, honestly, we were pretty on topic most of this podcast. So of course it derails in like the last few minutes that we're recording it, but whatever. I've also been listening to Ghostface Killer, Supreme Clientele, one of the best hip hop records ever made. I don't know why I put it on, just in that mood. And the last thing I listened to is this band called Dressel Amorosi, which is like, I think one of the members was in Claudio Seminetti's Demonia, and then later Goblin Incarnation, and then I think he plays with Fabio Frizzi now. I saw Jesse from Diabolic talk about this record. It's called Death Mentha, and he's like, basically the way Jesse posted about it, he said like, this is the only band I've heard that's actually nailed the Goblin sound in a modern context.
Okay.
And I put it on, and sure as shit, nails the Goblin. So it's on all the streaming platforms, all that. Definitely check it out. It's some pretty good shit. But that wraps up this episode of the Cinematic Void podcast. I hope everyone's been enjoying January Giallo around the country, be it at Los Feliz 3, the Music Box, Coolidge Corner, virtually Central Cinema in Knoxville, wherever you've been getting your Giallo fix. I hope you've been enjoying all that content coming from Cinematic Void. Until next time, see you in the void.